Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher. I don't know whether you guys missed me or not last week when you were celebrating your Thanksgiving holiday or whatever else you may have been doing, but I certainly missed all of you. It just wasn't, the week felt somehow incomplete without all of the usual interaction and banter with all the podcast listeners. So I'm back this week, and you'll all be so happy to know that I'm not alone. I'm in Las Vegas by myself, but joining me here via Skype is your friend and mine, Mr. Snostnlost himself, Jason Smith. Welcome back, Jason.
Thanks, Clayton. Happy to be back.
How are you feeling this time?
I feel great, man.
Oh, good, because last time we had you on, I think that you were suffering from the Ebola virus, or was it SARS? I can't recall.
It was a little of both, actually.
That strange, peculiar combination of SARS and the Ebola virus.
Yep.
Well, needless to say, he's made a miraculous recovery, and he's back with us. So, first things first, how is the online grind treating you these days?
It's going okay. You know, my focus has been, I've been playing a bit, but I've been doing, so I got a new job.
Oh.
I am now the manager for the ACR Stormers group.
Wow.
Yeah, so that has been keeping me pretty busy, kind of learning the in and outs. It's sort of like learning on the fly, you know. I've never really had a management position before, so it's a whole new world for me, but I'm like, you know, it's interesting.
A whole new world.
Yeah, exactly. I was
Hey,
hoping
man,
you would break into the song. I was like, maybe if I say this, Clayton will bless us with song.
Yeah, only if it's a Disney reference. That's my strict rule for no reason whatsoever. Hey, man, congratulations on the new job. That's fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So what exactly does your new job entail?
So there is a group of ambassadors for the ACR Stormers group called the Gold Stormers. I was in the Gold Stormers for the last year or so, and then I became the manager for that group. The guy who created the group ACR Stormers passed away, unfortunately, a couple of months ago.
Okay.
And he was the manager after he created the group. He started managing the group, and he was in charge of like what was going on with the Gold Stormers, what promotions they were pushing, and all that kind of stuff. And he was also, you know, kind of there for the greater community, the greater ACR Stormer community, the people who are kind of like, you know, regulars in the home games and in the ACR Stormer streams. And, you know, we have like an open mic stream once a week, which means there's somebody in the ACR Stormers who is not a Gold Stormer who gets to host a home game.
So, Jason, let me just back you up a little bit. I'm sure a lot of the listeners know what you're talking about, but I just have this weird feeling that some of them are like me and they're more live pros. What's a Stormer? What's a Gold Stormer? What's a group?
Yeah, I apologize.
What's a group? I don't get it. Tell me what's going on with this stuff.
Okay, so the ACR Stormers is just like it's basically like a low stakes community, right? There's low stakes home games. There's always these like, you know, they do stuff to promote ACR. There's giveaways that you can win. You can win little like loyal rewards like tournament tickets and, you know, buy-ins for tournaments, things like that. It's just a way to sort of get people who aren't involved in online poker that might want to play for smaller stakes involved. Get people who play smaller stakes involved in a community, you know?
Yeah.
And that's basically what it's all about. It's about, you know, kind of celebrating the low stakes guys while also promoting the high stakes players in the field. And, yeah, you know, there's like a Discord chat and there's, There's all these Twitch streamers that are part of Stormers, and it's just a community of online poker players, basically.
And our very own Killing Bird, Derek Tenbush,
Yes,
is a Stormer of some kind.
yeah,
Tell us
he's
about
a
what
Gold
he does.
Stormer. Yeah, he's one of the Gold Stormers. So,
Okay.
yeah, they send us, they do all these like promotions for us too. Like the Gold Stormers, they're kind of the ambassadors, right?
Okay.
And so Derek and I were both Gold Stormers, and we got a chance to go to Costa Rica in May
Wow.
to commentate for a live event that was down there. And so the Gold Stormers, like being part of that group, was what created that opportunity for us.
Got it.
Right? Yeah. So it's yeah.
Very cool.
Yep.
So
that's how I met Derek. That's how I know him. Yep.
Oh, no kidding. So now, if you are an online player and you want to become a Stormer, what is the process of becoming a Gold Stormer or a Stormer at all?
So you just fill out a little registration form online for free, and then you are officially an ACR Stormer. And then, if you want to be involved in the community, which is why you would join Stormers to begin with, you can. There's a home game every night of the week, 7 days a week, and you can view the streams where the Stormers kind of hang out and play poker and talk poker, and there's like a strategy discussion in the Discord, and then there's just like a life discussion, and it's just a standard poker community.
It sounds really cool. What makes it a home game?
So it's just called a home game. It's just like if you frequent a streamer who's part of the Gold Stormers, then you can get a password to enter a home game. So it's just basically like the community playing a tournament that's just for the community. It's in the private section of the tournament lobby. And anybody's welcome, as long as if you're hanging out on stream, you'll hear about it. And yeah, Derek's home game is actually tonight.
Right, and I know that he has a charity component.
Yep.
Derek is a big fan of dogs, and I believe that his event tonight, as we're recording this on November 27th, Derek is unable to join us for this podcast recording because he is storming it up. And he's doing it for the Beagles.
Yes, he is. For the Tri-Beagle Rescue, I think it's called.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe I have that name wrong. I could have that wrong. But it's for a Beagle Rescue that him and his wife support, and they put in a lot of time and effort toward it. And
it's very cool. I love when I hear about people using poker and their adjacency, is that a word, to poker as a way to do something good. Because, at the end of the day, how many titles you win or how many rings or bracelets or even how many dollars you make, I don't really think that determines your success on Earth. I've been spending a lot of time on this podcast talking about despicable behavior among poker players and how it makes us all look bad when someone gets in trouble for doing something wrong, like William Kassouf or Gordon Vayo, where they get in trouble for kind of doing something shady or breaking the rules or just committing a crime, as in some cases. And so it's nice to hear about poker players, trying to make a difference in a positive way and not just every man for himself kind of mentality. So I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what is the link if I wanted to go online and register to become an official Stormer? Am I putting you on the spot by asking you for the link? If not, we could just put it in the show notes.
I can find it for you in 2 seconds.
Okay.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
All right. Well, while he's looking for that, we'll let you guys know what else we're going to be discussing today. This won't be just a commercial for Jason and the ACR Stormers. We are going to be talking some strategy. As I mentioned, I'm in Las Vegas, and one of the things that brought me here was I wanted to participate in the World Series of Poker Circuit Main Event at Planet Hollywood. So I did play in that, and I have, I think, a pretty interesting hand that I played in that I'm going to be getting to. And we're also going to have a hand that Jason is going to share. I believe it's one that he played in an online event. I've been playing a lot of cash games here in Vegas as well, but This is Tournament Poker Edge, so I'm going to wait until somebody else starts Cash Poker Edge and talk about those hands on that podcast because I'm staying on brand. even though I would love to talk about some of these cash game hands, we're not going to be doing that today. Have I stalled long enough for you to get that link for us, Jason?
So I don't have the link that I can say the link, but it's super long. So
right,
put
okay.
It in the notes.
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure that we put that in the notes.
Yeah. I promise you, nobody's writing it down if I say it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, it's good. Online poker can be a bit isolating. Playing online poker can be an isolating experience. It can get lonely at times. I know a lot of people do that kind of on their own, maybe all by themselves. The stereotype is the online pro in his parents' basement in his pajamas or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, oh, yeah, you just sent me that link. Yeah, no one's going to be able to write that down, but we'll definitely include that in the show notes for you guys. So I love that, we're trying to build a little bit more camaraderie and friendship among the online poker community. And ACR is America's Card Room. And is that the site that you play on the most, or is it an exclusive thing? Or
it's honestly the only site that I have been playing on for the last, probably 3 or 4 years. I would say I've played maybe 10 tournaments on some of the other sites over the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So which is
pretty much
a very low. I play more than 10 tournaments a day, so just to put that in perspective, that's a very low amount.
Right. So I took a little shot at ACR a while back, and I found the competition extremely tough. Do you feel like the typical tournament grind on ACR is tougher than it might be on some of the other sites?
It depends on the stakes you're playing. So if you play the really high stakes, if you start playing the 320s and up, yeah, you're going to be playing against really, really tough fields, right?
Yeah.
And the nature of the tournaments on ACR is they're all re-entries through registration period, right?
Right.
And or the vast majority of them. And by vast majority, I mean probably 99.5% of them or more.
That is vast, yeah.
Yeah. So, basically all of the tournaments, we'll say, are re-entries. So what ends up happening is that final tables do end up being tougher competition. You don't get as many weak players getting through to final tables. It happens. It's not like it never happens, but it's just, it used to be when you would make a final table, you might have 1 or 2 other tough players and a bunch of guys who were just happy to be there, right?
Yeah.
And now it's you might have 1 or 2 guys that are just happy to be there and 7 really tough players.
Okay.
Or at least fairly competent players,
Right.
So the fields are tough in general, but when you play lower stakes, there's definitely money to be made for sure.
Okay, well, good. Well, we're definitely going to get into. Why don't we do that now? Why don't we get into a hand that you played, presumably on ACR? You said that you had a hand that you wanted to bring up on the podcast.
Yeah, I do. It is a hand, I am not sure if it was a 320 or a 215 buy-in. But it was a higher stakes buy-in, and it was a 6-max tournament. It was some time ago. And let's see here. So we're dealt in 5-handed, and the blinds are 350, 700 with a 70 ante. We are playing about 40 M deep. Or 81 big blinds.
Thank you for doing the M, by the way. It's really catching on. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but anytime someone tweets me about M and how they're starting to use it again, they're bringing back M, I always retweet that because I think it's exciting that we're starting a movement here that we're at least going to consider M as one way to measure your stack. So
I couldn't think of a way for me to say I could care less about you, Clayton, if I didn't include M in the description. If I would have just said big blinds, it would have been a total disregard for who you are as a person.
A slap in my face.
It would have just been I just do this with Clayton because he's the guy who does this, not because I enjoy working with Clayton. So I'm just going to say big blinds because screw this guy.
Right. Yeah, it would just be a very passive-aggressive way for me to let me know how you really feel. So thanks for that. Appreciate it. All right, so we've got a good stack here. M is 40, 81 big blinds.
Yeah.
It's so what is our stack in number?
Okay, we have about 56,000 chips at 700 big blind.
Okay, great. Got it. Okay.
It folds around to the button, and he is an aggressive regular. He's a regular in like the medium and high stakes tournaments on ACR. He plays pretty well, really aggressive, definitely can be tough at times. And he opens the button for a min raise at 14. He has about the same amount of chips. He has like 78 big blinds. So he starts the hand roughly 54,500, and we have about 56,000. Right?
Okay.
So we're basically in the same ballpark as far as our stack goes, and we are well in front of the table. He opens to 1,400 on the button. The small blind folds, and we have Jack 8 of clubs in the big blind.
Oh, yeah, this is an interesting hand already. Okay, so now, 5-handed. Now, this is probably, I'm guessing, about halfway through the tournament?
Yeah, I would say something like that. I would say there's probably 2 or 3 levels of late registration left, and usually, I don't know, we're probably 2/3 through the field by the time registration ends.
Okay, so we're not exactly close to the money, but you're saying that we have an above average stack.
Oh, yeah, well above average.
Well above average stack. Right, okay. So, and now people are still buying in, and if we have 56,000, they're going to buy in and get 10,000 or something?
Exactly. Yeah. People are buying in for 10,000 at this level still.
Okay, got it.
So we're in really good shape compared to the field, right?
Right. And are the other players at your table similar skill level to this player on the button? You seem to be giving him a good amount of respect.
There is a good player on my left who folded in first position, which would be the hijack here.
Yeah.
And then a couple of relatively unknowns, guys I've played with before I don't know that much about. They both seem to be on the looser side. One of them I think is kind of a looser, kind of a, we'll call him a recreational player.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's in there too, but everybody else folded. So nobody else is actually involved here. But yes,
Right.
Those guys are at the table.
So some people might be wondering why the heck I'm asking that question when the other players have all folded. But, for me, part of playing well in tournaments is considering all the factors. So in other words, do I want to get involved? Like if I'm considering re-raising with this hand, or if I'm considering, playing back at my opponent here, one reason to do that would be because it's just a really tough table and I need to fight for every pot or I'm going to get lost in the shuffle. If there are softer spots at the table, then maybe playing a big pot against this player from out of position is not advised. So, I think some players, they kind of look at their hands in a vacuum, and I try to consider the entire situation.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Now, of course, if you're playing online and you got 16 tables open on your screen at a time and they're all 5 max, I really doubt you're going to really be able to think about the subtle nuances of the game.
Sure, you're probably sticking to a pretty straightforward strategy at that point.
Yeah. So just, the more tables you have open, the fewer variables you can consider. But I think the players that do a lot of tables, they probably feel that even though they're giving up a little bit of edge by not considering every single factor, they are still enjoying a nice edge just by having that many more multiples of their EV on that many more tables.
Sure.
But I think there is a certain point. I got the wrong term in my head. It's not the inflection point, but there's a point at which the balance shifts, and that now you are.
A tipping point, right?
That's it. Yeah. Thank you for that. A tipping point, even.
I got your back, please.
Yeah, appreciate that. So, with all that in mind, I think calling is the play here. Let's just see a flop. We have a suited 2-gapper. We've got so many chips compared to the pot and also compared to the average. I don't really want to get involved in a raising war pre-flop here. And I also don't want to fold because I think our hand is too strong, especially given the attractive pot odds. So let's call and see a flop.
I 100% agree.
Sweet.
So that's what we do. We call, and we see a flop, and so there's 3,500 chips in the middle, and we're playing 53,000 effective, so we're very deep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Something like 16 or 17 times the pot, right?
Yeah,
Give or
SPR
take.
of about 17 here.
Yeah, give or take, right?
Sure.
So the flop comes, remember we have Jack 8 of clubs, flop comes Ace of clubs, Jack of diamonds, 7 of diamonds. So we
Can
flop
you
middle
repeat
pair.
that one time? I'm sorry, I lost you for 1
Sure.
second there.
No problem. It's Ace of clubs, Jack of diamonds, 7 of diamonds.
Okay.
So we flop pair with backdoor flush and backdoor straight draws.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, middle pair, not top pair. Middle pair.
Right. Middle pair, yeah.
Yep.
All right, so it's a fairly robust flop for us. A lot of good things can happen. We might even have the best hand right now. I think a lot of times we will. I see. I mentioned last time we spoke that I like to have a leading range.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would put this hand into my leading range here, though. I think you could sometimes check raise with this hand. But I think check calling is probably what I would do most of the time.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. But so if we're planning on check calling here with this hand, what hands are we planning on again check calling the turn or check raising the turn?
Right.
What cards? We should have that sort of worked out too, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Like,
having a plan for.
yeah.
Yeah, so, I don't know this player on the button and his exact frequencies, but I think middle pair on this board, unimproved, is probably okay to call twice with. So check call flop and then check turn, check call the river.
So when you say unimproved, you mean
right,
just no two pair, no trips, or do you mean not unimproved, like we didn't turn a draw of some
right,
sort?
like we don't pick up any equity, like a brick.
Okay. Then what cards would you consider a check raise with then?
Yeah, so I think check raising, obviously, when we make trips or two pair, but I think you could also check raise sometimes when you pick up, another card that could help us, especially a really good one like the 10 of clubs, something like that would be a fun card to check raise, because you could also represent a straight when cards like that show up.
But like cards like what show up? I'm sorry, I missed.
The 10 of clubs?
Yes. So that's like one of the most perfect cards in the deck for us, right?
Yeah, so putting that as well as any 8, as well as any jack into our check raising range might be pretty reasonable.
Well, do you think though if that you're only check raising when you're in this spot when it's the 10 of clubs, or maybe like we'll call the 9 of clubs too, that's pretty much the same,
yeah,
right?
Same card, yeah.
Okay, so that's 2 cards in the deck that we're check raising as a bluff, and then there's 5 cards in the deck that we're check raising as value. So I guess that makes some sense.
Yeah, I don't think we need too many more in there. I mean, obviously sizing will really determine whether you're perfectly balanced game theoretically, optimally, but I think, yeah, just have, you're not going to be check raising that often, especially on the turn.
Mm-hmm.
So just having a couple of bluffs for the few times that you will be doing that is good. And I like the 10 of clubs actually a little more than the 9 of clubs because you just have more straights.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so let's check. And then, of course, his sizing will help make up our mind as well.
Absolutely. So we do check. I would never lead in this situation either. And he bets 1,400. So same bet as pre-flop. He bets 14 into 35. So what is that? Roughly 40% of the pot. I think that's 2 parts into 5. So yeah, he bets 40%. So now I think we already kind of agreed that we would be check calling this flop almost always, and this is certainly a reasonable bet size to check call.
Yeah. Now, Jason, I wanted to, before we move on to the turn, I believe you said the last time we spoke that you're not a big donk leader.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any flops that you might just bet right into him?
So not at this stack depth.
Right.
I would do that like when stack depths are a lot shorter, I will have a leading range from time to time. But when the stacks are this deep, I basically have 100% check to the razor strategy.
Right. Okay.
So that way it's just easier for me. I don't know if it's laziness or I'm not smart enough to figure it out or what. But it's easier for me to sort of figure out on the flop how to deal with my ranges. Like if I have a leading range, it's like how do I break it up so that I still have strong checks? Or how do I break it up so that I still have some, draws that I check and draws that I lead and strong hands that I check and strong hands that I lead. It just gets sort of convoluted for me. So I feel like it keeps the game a little bit more simple to just have 100% checking range. And that way I have all strong hands. Like I check all of my strong hands and I check all of my weak hands.
Right. Right. Whereas I might lead with a set of sevens, a flush draw, ace seven. Like I'll have some leads in there that are value hands as well as the flush draws being the and what I'm looking for there is that my opponent will also like if I flop two pair magically, right? Then I'm just hoping that my opponent has an ace or that he will bluff me. Because a lot of players that no one leads, pretty much everyone checks to the razor. So when you do lead, they don't really believe me.
Yeah.
No,
that is true.
They pretty much always put me on the flush draw, which I will sometimes have.
Yep.
But I really get paid a lot when I actually have something.
So I wonder this though. So that's a nice exploitative play for sure. But I'm wondering in a tougher game with people who've maybe played with you before and kind of understand that tendency you have. If you're check raising or if you're leading your two pair and you're leading your one set that you have, because I would imagine that we both can agree you're probably three betting both aces and jacks pre-flop.
Yeah, I would say close to 100% of the time.
Right. So the vast majority of the time we're going to be three betting those. So we don't really have any top set or middle set on this board. We're leading our bottom set and we're leading our two pair combos. And then we're also leading some flush draws. So when we check, we are severely capped in this situation for anybody who might know your game.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point but also, my way of balancing that is I don't always lead with the strongest hands.
Right.
So I don't do it every single time. So I'm capable of checking to the razor with the bottom set or two pair, just as I'm capable of checking to him, especially at this stack depth, with a flush draw, because sometimes I'll go for the check raise.
Right.
Yeah, so sometimes I lead the flush draw and sometimes I check raise it. Yeah. So
no, fair enough. And I'm sure sometimes you check your set of sevens too, and sometimes you check your ace jack or ace seven as well, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't always lead them, but I like to have a leading range. I don't like to have that. I don't like to take that tool out of my bag completely.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But I noticed that everybody checks the razor. I mean, especially live. Like almost never see any donk leading, and I just feel like it's something that it's when I do it, I notice how confused my opponents always seem, and so it might be something just for the sake of being hard to read, just to throw in sometimes maybe even a total stone cold, 6-5 of hearts on this board.
Yeah, just like a complete airball.
Yeah.
And just kind of like barrel if you turn a straight draw or something like that.
Yeah, where you might be able to pick up a little something, but nothing you got to get too excited about. So, yeah, I mean, obviously when you play online, especially if players use a HUD, which I think on ACR is possible.
Mm-hmm, it is.
Yeah, so then I think that it's really, really important that you balance your ranges and that everything is, is kind of in line. But obviously, when you're used to playing live like I am, it's less important. It's still very important, especially against tough opponents, but it's even against them, it's way less important. because they can't see all the hands I played for the last 3 years.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Yep, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we can move on if you're ready.
Sure. So, okay, so where were we? We were at the 3,500 in the middle. He bets 14K after we check to him.
1,400.
1,400, yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
That'd be a big overbet.
That's a little bit of a difference, right? 1,400 into 3,500, and I think we both agreed we would go for a check call here.
Right.
So we call, there's now 6,300 in the middle, and we get the 10 of spades on the turn.
Okay, 10 of spades. We like that card, which kind of reminds me of a question you asked about 5 minutes ago. What cards would we check raise on the turn?
That's right.
And I said the 10 of clubs. So do we check raise the 10 of spades? I mean, you could definitely make a case for it. It's a good card for us. Gives us a little bit more equity.
Yep.
And this deep, you can really apply a lot of pressure to your opponent when, he probably won't have better than one pair very often.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have such a wide open range, and he is going to be c-betting an ace-high board maybe 100%.
Right.
So,
yeah, he's probably opening 100% of his buttons or close to it at a 5-handed table.
Mm-hmm. And he knows that in our range, we probably don't have any pocket aces or pocket jacks.
Right.
So we don't have top sets on this board. So he can barrel on the turn here quite often, too.
Right. We do block a few straights with our 8.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it more attractive, I think.
Yep.
All right. So I guess we're going to check to him again, right?
Yep. We check to him here on the turn, and he leads for half pot, 3,150 into 6,300. So now there's 9,450 in the middle, and he has 48,000 behind. We have him covered.
Okay. Now, when he bet a smaller percentage of the pot on the flop than he did on the turn, or to put another way, he's now betting a larger percentage on the turn than he did on the flop. Would you read anything into that sizing?
No, I think that's really standard. I think that most players, especially nowadays online, they're going for smaller c-bets and then larger turn bets. Now, usually the bet sizes are even more polarized than what he's doing. Like he went 40%, now he's going 50. It's not unheard of for players to go like 25% and then 75%, and that is sort of like the standard line, especially on more wet runouts. And this is a pretty dynamic board with, you have a flush draw on the flop. This 10 fills in a lot of stuff. It's pretty coordinated. There's a lot of different things going on. So I would sort of expect a value hand to bet a little bit larger for protection and value.
Okay, so then that might lean us more toward thinking he's that much more likely to be bluffing because he's not really betting for value.
Going for thin value with just like even like ace king or ace queen, just like or even just like an ace, ace 5, like just going for thin value with top pair kind of a thing. But also having, potentially some flush draws, potentially some just random king X or queen X hands that have gut shots, hands like that,
Yeah, it's pretty hard to range him.
Yeah, he's just going to have such a wide range, and especially his range doesn't shrink all that much when he c-bets the flop. And he is a player that plays on the more aggressive side, so I don't think his range is going to lighten up that much on the turn either, because he's just the kind of aggressive player who is almost always going to bet the flop, and then because of our pre-flop range, is going to bet this turn a lot too.
Okay.
So he's basically wide open here. He can have all of his button opening hands, which is probably, I would say, in the neighborhood of 50% or so, 45, 50% of hands. Right.
But it's kind of hard for him to have nothing at all, just because the board is so coordinated.
Sure. Like he's going to, it's very hard for him not to have some piece of this.
Right.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So Okay, with that in mind, do you think, well, let me ask you this way. Do you think that he would bet more, a greater percentage of the pot on the turn if he had a really strong hand?
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, because I think for one, he would want to protect it because, like we said, this board has a lot going on. And two, he's going to want to play for max value, right? He's going to want to try and get as many chips out of me as he can. So I would expect a much larger bet with an actual monster hand here.
Right. So we can discount the possibility that he has a monster hand for a lot of reasons. One of them is that we have an 8. Another one is that we have seen that he would normally have bet larger with a really big hand. So with that in mind, I think if you did decide to, if you were to tell me that you like check raising here, I can get behind it. I typically wouldn't check raise this. Actually, I think this might be, my first instinct was maybe to check fold. Even though I said we could call twice, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what this half pot bet means, and I don't play enough online poker to know. So I'm going to take your word for it that this is probably leaning more towards more of a bluffing hand, or at least not necessarily a bluffing hand, but at least not the top of his range.
Yeah, it's like a capped value range and a lot of semi-bluffs.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I would say we take out the top of his range, just like you said. So yeah, I think typically I would go for, I think at this stack depth and this bet size, typically a check call would be in order. I think it would be totally okay. I mean, you still have second pair, you have a gut shot with it, you have a guy with a wide range who opened the button. Like there's a lot of reasons to just call here. I think on a shorter stack size we could maybe advocate more often for a check fold on some stack depths. But this deep versus aggressive opponent, there's just no way I would check fold it.
Right.
But that said, you have a good read. I did decide on, so this is the type of player, because of how aggressive he is, I expanded my check raising range, and I was going to be raising here if any club came, if any 9 or 10 came, or any jack or any 8, I would have checked. I think an 8 I probably would have check called. But okay. a jack or any of those draw cards, I was going to go for a check raise.
All right, so you included all the hands that I would check raise with, as well as the offsuit versions thereof.
As well, yeah, the offsuit versions, and yeah, any flush draw the card that came, I would go for a check raise here, I think, in general.
Oh, I see. Any flush card. Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah,
all right.
So yeah, second pair like into a semi-bluff.
Yeah, sure. And now this is a nice adjustment, I think, because you're basically reacting to your opponent's aggressive tendencies and knowing that his half pot on the turn range is so wide and doesn't necessarily include a lot of his best hands, because those hands would bet a greater amount. I think this is a good, it's good logic for expanding our check raise semi-bluffing range. We're not really value betting though. I mean, we don't expect to get called. I mean, I guess you could get called by worse if he has a draw. So in that sense, you're kind of merging check raise bluffing with check raise value betting, but I think mostly we want him to fold when we do this.
Yeah. Mostly we want him to fold, but if in the unlikely scenario he does call, what river cards are we betting again?
Yeah, so that's a good question. That is the $1 million question, because there are so many times when I make a play expecting my opponent to fold very often, but I don't think far enough ahead. Well, if I do this, and if by some chance he calls, how often should I give up? On what cards should I give up? What does his call mean? So if we put numbers on it, you said that on the turn, well, did you tell me his bet size on the turn?
Yeah, he bet half pot.
Right. That's right.
So 3150 into 6300.
Into 63. Okay, so 3150 into 6300. And so now if we check raise to a healthy amount like 11,000 or something like that, it's hard for him to call with nothing. Right? With that kind of, it helps us define his hand a little bit more.
100% agree.
So I would, if you do check raise here, I think 11,000 is probably the smallest amount that I would want to go.
Yep. And then what is our plan across rivers?
Across all rivers, yeah.
Yeah, like which hands are we, which cards are we betting again?
Right. So if he calls the big check raise, then it should be easier for us to narrow his range.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to have at least a pair of aces or a good draw.
Yeah, I mean, I would say he's going to have an ace. He's going to have hands like pair plus straight draw, like Jack Queen, Jack King, 10 King,
Sure.
10 Queen, 7-8, 7-9, 10-8, 10-9. He's going to have, 2 diamonds sometimes, but I think that, honestly, he would throw some of his flush draws, if not all of them, especially the ones without showdown value. So like all of his non-10x of diamonds, ace x of diamonds, I think he would throw a lot of those into his shoving over our check raise range, right?
Wow. That's like...
I think he would do that because I think he's the type of player, the way that I believe he thinks, that he's not just going to want to have only 2 pair or better when he shoves on us. He's going to want to have mostly value but some bluffs. And so the best bluffs for him to have are either some combo draws with flush draws, like, I guess he could do it with like 10 Queen of diamonds or something like that. But I think that for the most part, he's going to have to choose some flush draws to just call. But he's going to shove some of his flush draws, probably his weakest ones, right?
Yeah.
Like if he opens 6-4 diamonds on the button, I think without showdown value, he'd want to just get that in.
Yeah, I guess, it makes sense. It just seems to me like, you've got probably twice the average stack. You're up against the only other, big stack at the table. You're halfway through this tournament. It just seems like getting involved in this huge confrontation is going to be 170 big blinds in the middle.
I should say that this particular player and I have a ton of history. And
okay.
We go hard at each other.
Okay. So
there's lots of 3-betting and 4-betting going on between us.
Right.
There's lots of. I don't know what was going on in this particular tournament, right? This one. I'm talking about our whole history the last few years.
Okay.
Right?
Well, that does change things a bit.
Yeah. So we have quite a bit of history. And it is a fairly aggressive history.
Got it. Yeah, so, okay, so a spitting contest, if you will.
Yeah. That was the friendliest way you could have said that.
Yeah, no, we've all been there, and this is part of the game. This is definitely part of the game, and if you feel like that's part of what's going on, then it might be It might make it more attractive to check and call. He's giving you 3-1 with his half pot bet, and if you're worried, you could easily get outplayed if you make it 11,000, and this guy shoves with any flush draw.
Well, so the only issue I would say with that is I think that I would go for a check call if I felt like he had a more polarized range in bet, say 2/3 pot or larger.
Right.
I think a check and call would make more sense because he's either going to have air or he's going to have like a really strong hand. But I think when he bets this sizing, he's just going for a lot of thin value. He's not going to do this as a trap with a very, very strong hand. He's going to want to try and get my stack because he knows that I'm not going to want to give up against him with a lot of hands. So here's the thing. I say that we have a history of being aggressive, but it's just I don't think that either one of us are going out of our way to play aggressively towards the other player unduly. It's just that neither one of us are going to back down with our ranges. Like we're not afraid of each other, even though we've ended up in these like sort of big situations against each other. You know?
Right. It's not like a big rivalry that you guys have.
No. I know
Yeah.
maybe I made it sound like that, but the thing is like it's just one of those situations where both of us like to play aggressively with our ranges and we just don't back down against each other.
Right.
You know? And so, when I see this bet size on the turn and this card that kind of helps me, like the thing that I don't mind is if he has a huge hand and just jams over the top of me here. Like that's fine. I don't mind just like raise folding because I think that the majority of his range is just going to fold or call because he's so capped at having just like top pair at best,
Right. So with that in mind, if he does shove, are you planning to call with your hand because he's probably going to be so weighted towards flush draws in that case?
I don't think that he's necessarily that weighted towards flush draws. I mean, I think it's probably fairly even. Like, he would still have hands like ace 10, ace 7, ace jack, pocket jacks, pocket aces, pocket 7s, pocket 10 sets, 2-pair combos. And then he's going to have some combos of flush draws in there. And, you think about all the combos of flush draws he can have that I think he would shove. And, like, what is it, like 15 combos? So he's, like, maybe even.
Right, but I thought
not even he's going to have less combos of flush draws than he is value hands.
Right, but we also said that the very best value hands he will probably have bet a larger amount.
Right, but what I'm saying is that's why I don't expect him to shove over the top of me very often.
But
because I think that when I check raise here, I'm pretty much guaranteed to see the river because I don't think that he's going to be shoving over the top. And if he did, I think I would just say, well, more power to you and let him have it.
Right. So then if he really does shove with those flush draws, then you just kind of get outplayed sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, you're supposed to get outplayed sometimes.
Yeah. Everyone gets owned from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, how crazy do we want to go with a pair of jacks and gut shot?
Right. I'm not trying to get 80 blinds in here. I'm just trying to win this pot. Hopefully take it down now, and if that doesn't work, well, then we'll, figure it out.
Right. Well, it's creative. I like it. All right, so did you make it 11,000?
I made it 11,222, so you had it spot on with your
I
sizing
approve
there.
of your sizing, sir.
Yeah. Yep.
I like the 3 twos at the end. Just really make them wonder. What's he doing with the twos?
It's just more that it made a 5 or a 0 at the end of my stack because I'm weird like that.
Little OCD. I thought you were going to say it's because the 2 is next to the 1 on the keyboard and you're too lazy to reach over to any other numbers.
No, my bet size was either going to end in a 2 or a 7. We'll say that.
Because you got to get it down to, oh my goodness. All right. Well, you can start therapy for that next week.
Right.
All right. So then you do your check raise and what happens?
Well, with all this talk about what we might do on the river, which we never actually discussed, we asked the question, but we never got an answer from you.
Yeah.
What hands do you continue with on the river?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I would continue with very many hands on the river. The reason why is because I think when he calls this big check raise, he should have hands that will be very hard for me to get him off of, especially in light of the history explanation that you just gave us. I think that he's going to hero too often with just one pair, top pair. And also, I'm beating a lot of his range, which is like the draws, the pair with a draw, the flush draws, like all those kinds of hands. So
that, okay, but then I think we need to think about, I don't disagree with your thought process here, but the question I would then ask is, what hands are we representing when we check raise this turn?
Yeah, so we are representing 2 pair or better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's what we're representing. I don't think
anything else, any other type of hands he might want to put us on that we're check raising with?
Well,
because if he's calling this check raise and putting us on 2 pair, that's whoa.
Right. So that's why I would usually give up.
So
because the only thing I can beat now is, well, no, yeah. See, I see where I'm kind of hitting a roadblock logically on that.
Well, don't you think that we could be check raising some flush draws here?
I mean, of course we could.
Right.
Of course we could, and he could put us on that and just call with like a top pair.
Exactly. Well, we've already capped his range at top pair at best by his bet sizing, right?
Right.
So when he calls us, we still give him that range. We don't change it.
Right.
And so if he has top pair at best, he's calling with top pair, hoping we have
a flush draw or some other kind of combo draw.
Right, or some other kind of combo draw. But most of our combo draws are hands that have showdown value and probably wouldn't check raise, right?
Right.
Like most people, I mean, you know, I'm not trying to make any judgments, but my observation is that most people aren't check raising Jack 8 or 10-9 or, you know, Jack 9 on a board like this, right?
Yeah, that's why I like to play, because it's creative. It's definitely outside the norm.
And that said, I'm not even doing this most of the time. It was just an exploitative situation. I felt like his range was capped, and so I wanted to go for it, right? Turn my middle pair into a semi-bluff. And if I get him to fold a worse hand, then, oh, well, let's scoop this pot, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not saying that, like, oh, most people aren't sick enough to do this. Like, I'm not. Like, I would probably check raise here, like, 1 in 50 times, you know?
Right. Maybe a little more often against this guy. You have this friendly rivalry.
In a situation where I have a specific read on a player, it's going to happen a little. But I'm saying I only get that specific read, 2% of the time?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
You know, it's very, very limited times where I'm going to be able to do something like this. So I guess my thought is this, right? Like, I agree with you, most rivers shutting down. I would think that I think I would check an 8 if it came. And just go for, like, the crying check call. If we river an 8, right?
Yeah,
if we river a jack, I think I'm betting.
Yeah.
Right? I think I'm betting for value. And then I think if it's a diamond, we need to continue the bluff, unless it's the ace of diamonds. But I think the 10 of diamonds is okay, even though it pairs the board, because we're repping so many 10-7s, jack 10s, ace 10s. We're repping all those hands when we check raise the turn, right? So when it fills up on the river, we can continue our bluff on the 10 of diamonds as well.
Yeah, I agree. If the board pairs, I think that's a good,
Well, yeah, but okay. If it's the ace though, I don't like it, because I feel like when he calls this check raise, he has a lot of ace X.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of his range is ace X, and I think that he has flush draws and, like you said, like 8-7 type hands.
Yeah, and I don't think he's the type of player who's going to fold trip aces to me on the river, even if it's the ace of diamonds, is all I'm saying.
No,
like, I wouldn't try and bluff him off of that.
No. Yeah.
So that is my plan going to the river. It's check raise a 9. Or, I mean, keep betting a 9 because we have a straight. Keep betting a jack because we have trips. Keep betting a diamond that's not the ace of diamonds because we're going to bluff the flush draw. We're going to pretend like we're repping the flush, right?
Yeah.
And then just give up everything else.
Okay.
Like no other cards that we're continuing on. And only check call an 8 on the river. You know, don't check call any other runouts. Just check fold if he decides to bet after getting check raised on the turn.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good strategy. I might not have thought of it because I think I was putting maybe too many flush draws into his range. And you're taking some out when he gets check raised like that. You're saying you think he might throw away some of his flush draws or shove
He's super aggressive with his semi-bluffs, and I think if he had a flush draw after I check raise, knowing that I can be bluffy with my check raises, I think that he would just pile it if he had a flush draw here. Like a lot of his flush draws, anyway.
Yeah. And he doesn't have to worry about looking foolish when you have a straight or something.
No, he's the type of guy who he does not, like, he doesn't care at all about losing a big stack of chips. Like, he is the type of player who, if he feels like he can get a fold, he's going to go for it with any amount of chips. Like, he's just fearless.
Right.
You know? He's that kind of guy. All
right. Well, he seems like a real fun guy to be at a 5-handed table with.
Well, fun guy, but he's tough too. Like he's not a pushover.
No, I was being sarcastic. I hate playing against guys like that.
Yeah. Like, he'll give you action, that's for sure. But he's gonna fight that. Like he's gonna fight for it too. You know?
You just have to breathe in and enjoy the variance.
Yeah. Just like, please, bingo.
Yeah, well, all right. I like it. You were able to construct a much bigger continuing range than I would have.
Yeah. Well, like I said, this is a very exploitative sort of continuing range. It's not a continuing range. As far as my check raising the turn, I wouldn't check raise the turn quite this often versus your typical opponent.
Right.
So we check raise and he does obviously call with all this conversation. There's no way I would be like, yeah, he just folded, so that's the end of the hand. Wouldn't that be pretty anticlimactic?
I mean, you were supposed to think theoretically, so why not? Yeah.
True. But still, what a letdown, right? No, he does call. So now there's 28-7 in the pot, and we're playing 40K effective.
Yeah.
And the 6 of diamonds comes.
Oh, wow. It's not only a diamond, it's a 6 of diamonds.
So it's ace, jack, 7, 2 diamonds with a 10 of spades, and now 6 of diamonds on the river.
Yeah. I mean, I guess according to our plan, we have to continue.
Yeah.
I guess the good news is we don't have to shove. I mean, you could be clever and down bet from your check raise even. Look like you're trying to go for thin value with your little flush draw, unless you think he's going to raise that too often.
Nah, with a guy like this, like I just, if I have a value hand, I am gonna bet like much larger, like 2/3 pot or so, I would say at least.
Okay.
If I down bet here, if I give him a reason to call, he's gonna call.
Okay,
if he just decides like, oh, I'm getting 4-1,
right,
or
right,
whatever, like I'm just gonna pay it off.
Okay, so let's
There's
forget
so much
that
in the
idea.
middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, there's just no way I would try and bluff him after all this action in this pot for like 7K. You know, I would just polarize it, be bluffing or a value hand. I mean, you know, so I think given that, I think I bet around 18K. Let's see. Yeah, I bet 18.8 into 28.8.
Okay.
So
about 2/3.
He tanked forever. I want to say he used almost his whole time bank, and thankfully he ended up folding.
Wow, that's a great.
But yeah, so I thought that was a fun hand when I was sort of looking through hands that maybe we could go over, and I came across this one. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this hand. This was great, you know. There's just lots to talk about. There's lots of different things because it's sort of an exploitative hand, and
yeah, well, I agree with you. I think you picked out a great hand, and just so the listeners know, I mean, most people have been real happy with the way we've been approaching these strategy discussions. To me, my goal is never to see how many hands we can talk about on one episode,
Yeah.
I mean, we could rush through them and just, get to the point. Well, what happened? Tell me what happened. But, I feel like the little theoretical that we have, well, what happens if this and what you're planning for that can just help you think about all your hands better.
Yeah, it's good training on like how you should be thinking as you make your decisions, you know? Because how many times do we end up in a spot where we're like, I'm going to go for this play here, and then something that we were hoping wouldn't happen happens, and then we have no idea what to do when the next card comes out.
Right. Or in my case, something we just neglected to consider that could happen. Like, so many times I'll make a play, like I'll play a lot of tournaments, and I'll be in a tournament against a short stack, and I'm like, well, his stack is such that he can't just call, so he's either going to shove or fold, and then he calls.
Yeah,
I didn't think that. Well, now what am I supposed to do? Because nobody in his right mind would ever call, but now he has. So how to proceed? Which happens a lot in more. I'm sure it happens a lot more in live, where people just don't. I think people overvalue their tournament life in live poker just because it hurts. It seems like it hurts more to bust out of a live tournament than it does out of an online tournament.
Absolutely. You've been one tabling all day, and when that one's over, it's like, unless you're at some big series where there's constantly tournaments running, it's like, well, now I'm done for the day. You know?
And it's like sad walk back to the hotel room or whatever.
Yeah, the walk of shame never feels good.
Yeah, you get the sad trombone playing in your head. And so, but maybe that just kind of as an overall kind of strategy, maybe bluffing more often in live tournaments where players are that much more reluctant to go broke or to look foolish. I find a lot of players, they don't bluff enough live because they They don't want to look foolish. They don't want to get caught bluffing and have to turn it over and say, "Oh, I missed," or
you got me.
The embarrassed. Yeah, you got me, or the embarrassed. Jack high, and they don't want to turn it over anyway. I mean, if you can say Jack high, you can show Jack high, but that's another story. Yeah. So I did mention earlier on the episode that we were going to talk about a hand that I played this week, but this hand has taken all the time that we have, and I hope that we can leave everyone with a cliffhanger. Stay tuned for next week's episode where we might get to hear the exciting hand that I played in the Planet Hollywood circuit event. Probably no one's going to lose sleep over that, but it's been a really interesting conversation, not just about the hand, but just about approach and about constructing ranges and, balance. A lot of kind of recurring themes came up as we talked through this one. So,
I had no idea when I picked this one out that it was just going to hog the whole hour. I had no idea. That's why when we got together and you were like, "Oh, you only have one? Well, we should find another." And I was like, "Yeah, you should do that because this is what I got."
Yeah, well, you brought a great hand to discuss. All right, so before we sign off, we'll remind everyone that Jason is now. What is your new job title?
Is the ACR Stormers manager.
The ACR Stormers manager. So congrats again on that. And
if they have any questions, if you don't mind, I can give them my info on that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know they can tweet you at Snost.
They can, or if they have any Stormers related questions, they can also reach me at acrstormersmanager@gmail.com as well.
All right, great. So ACR Stormers Manager at gmail.com. That's all spelled out, right?
Yep.
Exactly. ACR Stormers Manager at gmail.com. And we will also include the link so that you guys can join and become Stormers on the ACR platform. So what else, Jason? What else do you want people to know about before we say goodbye?
I think that is about it. If anybody is, you can check out my Twitch stream, which I haven't been streaming that much recently, but it is twitch.tv/Snostnlost. They can reach me on Twitter at Snostnlost. And yeah, that's it.
Terrific. Thank you for coming back on the podcast. Really appreciate it, and thank you for bringing such an intriguing and interesting hand. I'd love to know what your opponent had. I know we're not supposed to care about what he had this time. We're just supposed to think in terms of ranges, but there's still a little part of me is like, I wonder what he folded. I can't help myself.
I mean, honestly, knowing him, he could have tanked for a while with like Jack King or Jack Queen.
Sure.
A hand like that. I think that he probably just had like Ace 5 or Ace 4 or, just some weak ace that he tanked forever and was like, damn it, all of his bluffs got there on the river and all of his hands that were for value had me beat on the turn. So I just have to lay this one down. You know?
And a lot of it's because your sizing on the river is so strong and it's just threatening to really change his status in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And he only has one pair, probably. So, yeah, really interesting hand. Thank you again, Jason. And thank you all for listening. If you are not yet a member of Tournament Poker Edge, I really cannot think of any reason why you wouldn't go right now and sign up. Just visit tournamentpokeredge.com. We have more video with amazing poker expert coaches such as Jason here, as well as Andrew Brokus, Assassinato, so many amazing coaches, obviously Casey Jarzabek. So check out tournamentpokeredge.com. So for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge and my good friend Jason Smith, I'm Clayton Fletcher.
In Texas plays, fold them, let them hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart. show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun.